Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast. I am Race for the Prize. Let's look at optimal lineups from COTA in 2023, 2022, and then we'll even look at the Roval for 2023 because that was the one race with the stages. We're going to get the stages back, so let's become familiar with that. As we go into this podcast, we do want to look for familiar names. Those will help us build lineups for the 2024 race. We also want to look at archetypes and structure and build structure. That's what we want to do, and we'll try to make rhyme and reason of why some drivers finish where they do. For the most part, your top 10 were fast in practice, fast in qualifying, and are always pretty good. But we're going to have our outliers, our anomalies that round out our lineups, and we want to try to be able to predict how they got there, and not necessarily if they're going to do it again, but what to expect. And maybe through our process of making selections, we're not as critical of, oh, this guy wasn't fast enough. Well, let's see who slid into the lineup last year. Were they fast enough? How did they do it? But first, racefortheprize.com, that's where you can go to get access to the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet, that you can look at every single lap, so that you can understand why drivers finish where they finish, and you will have more control of your lineups. You're probably not going to want to play the full price since we are past the Ides of March. So email me and we can work out a pro rate or $10 for this weekend. That's a pretty good deal. Tons of track action. You're going to want to be a part of it. So you can see on the lineup last year, top 6 in fantasy score. Every single one of them fit into your lineup. And you even had $1,500 left over. And for the most part, really not a lot of surprises in this lineup. Reddick was really good, the highest rated driver. We'll talk about Gillen in a second. Buescher, 11th highest driver, meaning he was running fast laps. He was running up front for the most of the race, despite starting 32nd. We knew last year he had the best average finish, so really not a surprise. And at 7,700, no big deal there. Kyle Busch, top 6 rated driver. Get you a second place finish. Finishing position points. And 7th place differential. That's not a lot, but that is what we tend to see. We'll talk about that in a second. Just doing a quick run through here. Ross Chastain, 8. You may say that's not enough. Well, yeah, in comparison to Chris Buescher. But 8 is a pretty good sweet spot at a road course where there are not very many points available, and most of the finishing position points are going to be tied up in the drivers that start in the front. So if you can add 8 place differential on top of a very solid finish, you're going off. Unless, of course, we have a random wild qualifying where there's tons of place differential. You have to get in the mindset and the frame of there's not a lot of points available. So I don't really need these guys to jump 7, 8, 10 feet. The bar is a little bit lower. The bar is give me a top 10 and a handful of place differential, and you're going to be there. Chastain ran up front. Chastain has won this race in the past. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. finished 7th. Wasn't too crazy. His practice speeds weren't terrible. He started close to the front. He ran there just about all day. He doesn't wreck at the end, and he gets a bit of a boost to 7th. He was a borderline top 15 driver. Even Gillen was a top 20 driver, not too far, starting 36th. Does have a Truck Series win at COTA, if I'm not mistaken. Been a pretty good road course racer there. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say he's a good road course driver, but one of the things that you need to remind yourself is there's just degrees of difference. There's some elite road course drivers. There's some good ones, but then the difference between good and bad, we're talking about degrees of difference, and the equipment's not that much. And even if there is a discernible difference, you have to be pretty good to pass on road courses, and you don't have to be very good to block on road courses. So we often maybe emphasize too much with half the field how good or bad they are. I would make a strong argument that for half of the field, it doesn't matter how good or bad they are, and that anyone can be at the top of that list and anyone can be at the bottom of that list. And to see Gillen go to the top of that list and get a little bit further, it's no big deal. He actually finishes 10th. We'll try to break that down some more. So we do have one hog in the lineup. Check. And that is what we're looking for when we build this week. That is generally the pattern at most road courses. Got that out of the way. Cool. Place differential ranges from 8 to 21 in our optimal, or 8 to 26 in our optimal lineup. So yeah, you get some home run plays. You got a Busch in the back. Yes, I'm chasing that. Value plays with place differential opportunity. And as I said, Gillen going into this race was a guy that you could get behind, you could rationalize, and you could easily, and you can say that for just about anyone, again, because there's going to be stage cycling. Turn one can be a mess at COTA. We have course cutting penalties at COTA. We have wrecks and mechanical failures. You can make a legitimate argument for just about any value pick starting in the back. I would encourage you to chase place differential in the back and not necessarily get hung up on practice times or even track history, track type history. My value, I'm going to want to get some place differential if I can. It's going to present itself, and I hope I pick the right one. And I might pick the right one, and then during the final restart, it gets clipped in turn one, and then I lose, or vice versa. It's just the way that it is, and we all have to understand that. Your really super well-researched pick that you double down on and that you follow the chalk, and then it gets spun on the final turn, and then my galaxy brain guy comes through. It's just a scenario that you have to be prepared for, and you probably should build for. So that's our place differential. We look at in terms of where did they finish. All of them top 10s. So we are targeting top 10 drivers, and that's not a stretch for 4 of these guys. Reddick, even Bush, Chastain, yeah, they're all capable of top 10. Maybe a little bit of stretch for Stenhouse and Gillen. But again, as you're building, you need to maximize finishing position points. You need to see a scenario where that driver can get into the top 10. Maybe you can be a little more laid back and loose with your punt and take a 15th place finish, because even if Ty Gillen finishes 15th in this race, he's still going to be in the optimal lineup. Now, it'd be close because LaJoie gets up finishing 11th, and I said this in the previous podcast. LaJoie had a pretty good year at road courses last year. Again, you're like, oh, LaJoie's a good road course driver. I wouldn't necessarily say that. But what I would say is that when we look at the back of the pack, if we look at 15 and beyond, it's degrees of difference. And anyone is capable of that 15th place finish. And absolutely anyone is capable of finishing 20th. And again, LaJoie coming up there, Gillen coming up there, Stenhouse getting his day every once in a while, proves the point that, yes, there is an elite tier. And they're going to be top 5 in practice. They're going to be top 5 in qualifying. And they're going to be the 5 guys that are likely to win and be hogs. But there is a subset beyond that tier, and it's just pretty much anyone's game. So there's your optimal lineup. What else do I want to point out? Who were the surprises? So Gillen, we want to try to break this down a little bit more. So we know he was a 20th place driver based on his rating rank. And the next thing we know is that this race gets crazy at the end. So then we can pretty much just piece it together and figure out, well, he probably just had a decent day because he was a 20th place driver. And then at the end, it just kept going his way. Moves forward, holds position, moves forward, holds position. He pits right there on lap 20. Remember, this was not a stage cycling race, so you're going to have different pit sequencings. Goes out, cycles back to 20th. Caution comes out, he pits, gets his way back to 20th. So he is a 20th place driver, and then throughout all these cautions, he just avoids the chaos and goes from a 20th place driver to a 16th place driver to a 10th place driver. Nothing crazy, really. And we could very well see that outcome unfold. 20th place could easily turn into a 10th place. Any of these guys are capable of 20th place and turning into a 10th place. So if that's the case, a lot of rhyming going on here, then we're going to want to chase place differential. If you can envision the driver getting to 25th, which is not that crazy, then they're within striking distance of when the chaos comes out. Give them another 10 place differential points. Maybe they get to 15th by the end. So if anyone is capable of 15th, then why not play all the guys starting in the back? That's like 21 place differential points. Not really that crazy. Not really that wild of an idea. Who else do we got? I think LaJoie was the same thing. And he even suffered a penalty and was able to recover from it. right here. I believe he pits, gets a penalty, cycling in the back, staying in the back, gets himself up into the 20s. Caution fest, he jumps up to 11th as well. Not really the craziest build. Stenhouse pits right here at the end, but before he was basically a 15th to 20th place driver. Avoids the chaos at the end. Fresh tires maybe possibly help him. Gets a solid finish, but he had been there all day. Same thing with Buescher. Got himself up to the top 15 after driving from way in the back. Benefits at the end. And these guys were always out of the clown show. And that's the benefit of having fast practice, fast qualifying. In retrospect, this lineup's not really that crazy. You got Reddick, a guy that we love playing. Busch, very fast. You like playing him. Place differential's there. Top 10 for Chastain possibility? Absolutely. Place differential is there. Buescher starting in the back. We're chasing place differential with a good road course driver. Fair price. More than fair. So then the other two kind of out there's are Gilliland and Stenhouse. Stenhouse would probably be the toughest to get to because of his starting position. That would spook a lot of people. I understand that one's a little freaky, but playing Todd Gilliland as a straight punt, starting in the absolute back, knowing how these races unfold and knowing that he's not a terrible road course driver, really nothing crazy with that one. Let's look at 2022. We do have stages in this optimal lineup. Again, oops, sit down. We have one hog. So now that you know, and then from there, we want top 10s, and then from there, we want chase place differential. You dig? There are very few laps in a road course race. There's not a lot of points available. Obviously, we're only going to get one hog. With fewer laps, hog points or dominator points or lap leader points make up a smaller portion of the overall points available. And when we don't have 150 hog points, when they become less significant in the pie of total points available, that then increases the significance of finishing position points. You go to a race like Bristol where there's 500 laps, tons of fast lap points, tons of lap sled points, that can make the 45 finishing position points or 40 finishing position points look minuscule at times. So then when you shrink the fast laps and lap sled points, that then emphasizes finishing position points. That also emphasizes these place differential points. When drivers are scoring 100 points, 90 points at Bristol because they're running a bunch of laps, that makes these smaller. But when that number goes from 100 fast lap points or whatever, 80 fast lap hog points, down to 14, these numbers are now making up a larger portion of the pie. Thus, as we build lineups, we need strong finishes. We'll take place differential when we can. And the theory is that if we get all of our guys into the top 10, one of those guys is bound to be the dude that is the fastest and leads the most laps. That's your basic lineup construction. In this race, it was Ross Chastain. He starts 16th. Maybe a little bit of a surprise that season, but in 2022, we did see Ross Chastain and Suarez win road course races. This was the first on the scene. Exciting stuff. Hey, how about that? Either way, he's a hog. It's a 15 place differential. In terms of place differential, our lineup ranges from 8 to 21. Elliott gets you 8. That's fine. That's what we saw in 2023. 8's a good number. You get Chase Elliott starting 12th. Can you get a top 5? Yes. All right. Good play. Martin Truex Jr., 10 place differential points, starting 17th. Can he finish 7th? Yeah, I'll take that. Good road course driver. We know, though, in 2022, the next-gen car that JGR did struggle with this package, but ultimately he gets the job done. Austin Dillon starting 21st. Sure, we would like to see guys starting a little bit further back and probably wouldn't have hit the sweet spot for me. His rating was 21st, so he stood back there the whole time. But we got to do what we got to do. Tougher to explain that one. He does give you double-digit place differential. He does crack the top 10. He meets all the criteria. Being able to predict that would have been trickier. Michael McDowell doesn't quite get into the top 10. Michael McDowell starting 27th, 6,200. Good road course driver. Really not a lot to think about there. He even got a cutting the course penalty. I think I said he got a cutting the course penalty in 2023. It's 2022 where he got a cutting the course penalty. But he slowly climbs his way back up to the front on restarts. Good road course driver, starting in the back, 6,200. A much easier play than the Todd Gilliland. But again, with our value, we're chasing place differential. Because if it wasn't McDowell's day, it would have been another guy starting the back. And let's look, there it is. Todd Gilliland again, his teammate. And that's probably another thing that's helped Todd Gilliland's improvement to really be average or maybe a plus road course driver is working with McDowell, but also working with the inputs of McDowell. As McDowell makes his Ford better, it's going to make those notes carry over to help Gilliland's. So again, even if McDowell didn't come through, the punt in the back, another one would have. And there's the obvious one right there with Todd Gilliland at 5,600 starting in the back and moving forward. Two things that I'm pretty certain of is that I am going to require one hog and that my value guy is going to be deep in the field. From there, 3, 4, 5, 6, I definitely want top 10s. I definitely want place differential. I really like to look at practice and qualifying the guys that maybe just missed out on Q2, which would have been Elliott, who would have been kind of Truex. And then from there, there's just going to be a little bit of doubt and uncertainty and just circumstantial events that happen. You know, I think Eric Jones is actually a pretty good example of the craziness of this race. And we talked about in the previous video where you may not have wanted to play Eric Jones because he's 30th in practice and then he qualified 30th and he's not that cheap. Well, in 2022, they got about 4 laps on the track. Some guys were able to make 2 runs of 2 laps. Jones made 1 run, they missed it. So then obviously when he went out to qualifying, they missed it. And track position matters and all those things matter, but do we really know his talent? Do we really know how fast the car is? They got 1 shot, they didn't do it, and those problems compounded just because of the schedule. You give him a full race, maybe he can work some stuff out. I know you're making excuses, but we do sort of need to make excuses because we know the backpack of the field, there is only degrees of differences. And if you're going to decide I don't play Jones based on 2 laps in practice, I mean, who's making an excuse? Who's being more rational? I know hindsight's 2020 to go back to this, but I think you do need to be in the habit this weekend of saying, all right, I'm not going to overreact to 2 laps in practice. We know that these guys are all pretty much the same in the back of the pack. We know that these races are highly circumstantial and there are sequences that flip and flop. And drivers that didn't necessarily look good in practice qualifying or even the first stage can suddenly get a good result simply by holding. As I said before, because they're all so even and everything, it's hard to pass. And even a subpar car can do something which is block. It's hard to pass. It's easy to block. It's hard to move forward. It's easy to hold position. And with that being the case, you can hold people up. You can get a result that you may not deserve. All those things hold true. And overreacting 2 laps in practice, probably not the best bet. So we look at Jones, and hey, look at this. Magically becomes in the 12th place car just by cycling. Then his car just dies on him. So when we talk about Mario Kart COTA, which this is, Mario COTA, start calling it Mario COTA because turn 1 can turn into a mess, lightning bolts and red turtle shells. And we got course cutting penalties, lightning bolts and turtle shells at Mario COTA. And then we get cautions at the end. he is able to cycle back, gets to where he needs to be. And you say, well, I probably shouldn't have overreacted to him just getting 2 poor laps in practice. And when it was all said and done, he was able to, he actually drove from 30th to 25th, which isn't halfway bad. Then you cycle and you hold. It's not rocket science, folks. Anyone can play these games. A lot of drivers are on the table that you may not be willing to admit. Sure, building the regular optimal lineup and targeting guys like Ross Chastain. I know hindsight being 2020, but targeting what I'm saying is good road course drivers who can get a top 10 and can get some place differential. That's not that hard this week. Just taking some guy in the back, that's not that hard this week. Tricky part is going to be finding that 5th driver into your lineup, that 4th driver into your lineup, and what you want to value. And the truth is, it may not be the best driver. A lot of it's going to be circumstantial, and there's going to be context that you will pour over afterwards. But knowing that means probably diversify your lineup some. Knowing that means if there is some chalk, being not like super easy, awesome, maybe you avoid some of that. But you can easily go in directions that you probably didn't want to go just because we know of how COTA plays out. Anything else that I want to add about that one? If we're looking, you might want to look at Austin Dillon. So again, 21 driver rating. He was right there within striking distance all race, and it's not really that crazy because he started 21st, ran about where he was supposed to run, and then COTA does COTA, which is to drop all the mayhem at the end. So we can see, not a bad day for Austin Dillon. RCR's had some pretty decent road course equipment. All right, he benefits from cautions, he benefits from cautions, he benefits from cautions, and there it is. Now he's in 10th. Cars wreck out. Look, we can go down here and see. Look, you see these greens before the end? AJ, boom, that's a position for Dillon. Boom, that's a position for Dillon. Boom, that's a position for Dillon. Boom, that's a position. Just attrition, survival. And knowing that means I can play just about anybody because if they can just keep it clean, if they're the one that avoids the banana peel, then we're good. Last one I want to look at is the 2023 Roval race. The reason we're looking at Roval is not because it's a highly technical track like Austin, because it really isn't, and it's not really a good racetrack, but who cares? The reason I'm looking at this is because it was the only race last year where we got stage cycling. And with the stages, it changes the optimal lineups. Again, we only get one hog in our optimal lineup. We do have some that scrape off some fast lap points here or there, but really we've got one guy leading most of the laps. I mean, you even got Reddick down here, but because of a little bit of a bump in his finish, he is not able to get in there. He is too expensive. You got Elliott, who also leads, but he doesn't get in there. Either way, you're targeting top 10s, you're more than likely to nail one of these drivers who lead the most laps. Let's look at our optimal. We get a first place, a second place finish, 7th place, a 4th place, an 8th, and then rounding it out with an 11th. So again, as you're building, you really need to envision that all drivers can get to the top 15, really top 10, but then you can make a top 15 exception with your value pick, which would have been Ryan Preece here. He finishes 11th, which is better than 15th, 6,300. But for 5, for sure, really need top 10s. And these are no surprises. Allmendinger, good road course driver. William Byron, I believe, had the second average finish last season. Has been really coming into his own for every year, getting better at road courses. Same thing with Buescher, best average finish at the road courses last season. Ty Gibbs, a winner in the Xfinity Series, maybe a little bit of a sneaky road course driver that's not quite getting enough respect. I'm sure that's going to change this weekend at COTA, the way that he's been running this season. And people are going to start to look at his past results and say, oh, wow, he actually might be pretty good. This younger generation of drivers is definitely more adept to running circuits. Now, he didn't spend a lot of time in the Xfinity Series like some drivers who are running all those road courses. But the growth of these kids, they're running a lot more karts. They're running a lot of different things. Like Denny Hamlin probably just did ovals in Virginia forever. He didn't get any of that ingrained in him when he was younger. This next generation of drivers runs in a lot more disciplines. I think Gibbs has even done some like the Daytona stuff or Trans Am stuff. So a lot more experience, foundational understanding with the next generation. Now, I could be wrong on that, but it seems to be. I mean, he broke onto the scene with that Daytona Road Course win in 2021 and hasn't really changed since. Alex Bowman, another good road course driver that is underrated. Does he get wins? No. But is he consistently in the top 10? Is he maybe like, this is the one time where his showman nickname actually kicks in, and he is the showman because he is a magician who plays the sequencing correct more than any other driver, gets the stage cycling better than any other driver, and then holds position. Never really puts on a show in terms of I'm out front, but it is a kind of an illusion of, oh, there's Bowman again, popping into the top 10, pulling a rabbit out of his hat. Where did he come from? How did he do it? And overall, he has very solid finishes. So obviously the equipment is there. So we got one hog. The place differential ranges from 5 to 13, and the 5 was actually from your hog. Buyer and 12 place differential. So if you were to rewind the clock and try to build the lineup, can you get him into the top 5? Yes. He's starting 14th, which is a very good sweet spot, which tells me just barely missed out on the next round of qualifying. Can you get double-digit place differential? Yes. That makes him a play. Busher starting 20th, top 10 driver? Yes. Place differential? Yes. Put him in. Ty Gibbs starts 10th, so he did get in that final round. This one might have been a bit of a push for me. I mean, now, in retrospect, it's easier to consider playing Ty Gibbs. He is only 8,000, but to be quite honest and transparent, I don't know if I would have gotten there. I don't know if I would have been a believer in Ty Gibbs starting 10th. If I wanted to be really true and honest, I'm probably chasing more place differential elsewhere. You're probably chasing it with Ryan Blaney. You're probably chasing it with Ross Chastain, who didn't really have terrible days, right? They scored the 11th most fantasy points, 12th most fantasy points, a 38-4, a 36. So 13 points lower than Ty Gibbs, because Gibbs runs up there in clean air, gets you to place differential, gets a top 5. It's his day. I would have missed there. So maybe that's a lesson to be learned, to not get too greedy with your place differential. But I still think I would chase. I still think I will chase. Alex Bowman, 16th. Can he get to the top 10? Yes. Can he get those place differential? Yes. That's 7,700. Absolutely going to be a play. Reddick misses out. Logano misses out. Elliott misses out. Starting 8th, finishes 9th. Just, yeah, that would be a tough beat right there. Ryan Preece, very similar to the Stenhouse play from 2023, very similar to the Austin Dillon play from 2022 at COTA. Now at the Roval, 18th, does not feel like it's deep enough. I likely wouldn't have been all over this play, but he runs up front. I'm not going to break down his laps. His average running position, 16th, very similar to Stenhouse. And all right, let's just see. Does he get a big boost at the end? I probably do. 15th place car all day. Good restarts and attrition at the end, and he gets up to 7th. So those are what my notes say. Bowman, basically, might as well put the laps on the screen because people like to see the laps. Show them the product. So if we look at Preece, basically 15th place car. We get these cautions at the end. Good restarts. Picking off positions. Gets in the top 10. Stays in the top 10. Alex Bowman. Stage cycling's back. 15th place car. Gets up to 12th. Holds position. Stage cycles. Gets another good boost. The cycle. Gets up to 10th. Holds position through the rest of the day. Nothing really magical for the showman. Just a third-rate magician. But a third-rate magician is all that you need when we have stages and we are in a track where passing really just doesn't seem to happen. And Busher did the same feat as Bowman, just a little bit better. Busher's been doing this thing for years. Even when he had poor equipment, he would stage cycle and hold. Stage cycle and hold. Grab the top 10. See you guys at Denny's. That's how that works. Hopefully that helps you with your lineup construction. Pretty simple, folks. It's not simple, but the concept is one hog. I'm going one deep on place differential. You don't have to, because we saw Priest not necessarily be there, but you got some value with Gibbs in that lineup, but whatever. One hog, chasing a place differential cheapie like Gillen here. And then I'm really targeting top 10s. I'm targeting, trying to maximize place differential if I can with the rest of my lineup. And if you watch my previous video, when I'm looking for these top 10s, I'm looking at practice, I'm looking at qualifying, and I don't want to play all the guys up front, but I also don't want to go too deep either. But I will chase a really good, expensive place differential play if it's there. That's my build. Thanks for joining me. Blessed to have you guys around. Love you guys. Trip Light's fantastic.